If we play at our best, we will beat every team in this league playing at their best. So who's it on? Whose shoulders does it fall on? Ours. Let's go get it.
Welcome to JetsCentralRadio. Joe Caporoso.
Extra, read all about it. You can win anywhere if you can win here. And you ain't been nowhere if you ain't been here. Well, so hard, yeah, really, in the game, man. Same place, different faces on the train, man. New York.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Turn on the Jets Central Radio. We are heading into Week 4, the final week of the preseason. Only 2 days away, the New York Jets coming off one of the more interesting preseason games you will probably ever see. It's not that often you get to see your rookie quarterback have 3 interceptions, step out of the back of the end zone, and then your fifth-year veteran play in the fourth quarter and leave with a shoulder injury. Oh, and then also have your head coach spend half his post-game press conference facing sideways. Anyway, we have no shortage of things to talk about as usual with this Jets football team, so we're going to hop right into it with our first guest, Billy O'Rourke, the newest writer for the Jets at Pro Football Central. Billy, how you doing tonight?
Hey, how you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm hanging in there considering the festivities of Saturday night. What were some of your initial reactions to that game? Just big picture.
Big picture. You had to have believed going into this game that the Jets were hoping, or certain members of the Jets front office, maybe not everybody, maybe not Rex, were hoping that Geno would go in and nail down the job. This was Game 3, the dress rehearsal game, in there with the ones. He's going to go in there and make it impossible to defend starting Sanchez, and he just didn't. And he looked like what he is. He looked like a rookie who comes from maybe not a totally pro system in college and was, overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it, because I think even when, he started off the game pretty well, and even when he was completing passes, there seemed to be, he's a little slow in the pocket, a little slow to kind of pick up his reads and kind of almost locking into one guy. And yeah, he looked like a second-round pick. There was a reason he was a second-round pick, and he's a guy who really hasn't played that much in the preseason yet, and this was really his first action against a starting defense. So he was inevitably going to struggle. I think, a lot of Jet fans, the only reason they like Geno Smith so much or want to see him play so much immediately is because he's just not Mark Sanchez. And, that's not enough to merit being a starting quarterback. You don't want to coddle another quarterback. You want to have him actually earn the job. As of now, considering, Sanchez's shoulder status is up in the air, who do you think will actually be the starter under center in Week 1?
Yeah, as soon as Geno went out, I thought for sure it would be Sanchez Week 1, because I feel like Rex favors Mark. They're kind of married to each other at this point. And I thought it for sure would be. Now the injury throws everything up in the air. Now I honestly have no idea. I still think it's going to end up being Sanchez. I've always thought it was Mark's to lose. I thought this was Geno starting was a when not if situation. They didn't draft the kid with Mark on the roster to hold a clipboard. I think the ultimate goal is eventually this is going to be Geno's team, but start him day one out there against the revamped Bucs secondary and Darrelle Revis of all people, I just couldn't see it. But as of right now, I still think it's going to be Sanchez if the arm heals up in the next week. And most Jets fans don't want to hear that. They've had enough. They've seen enough. I saw, Twitter on Saturday night, excuses being lobbed for Geno that these same people would have killed Sanchez for a week ago or last season or last 2 seasons. At the end, I still think it's Sanchez. He's given enough rope to hang himself. And by Week 5 or Week 6, it's Geno. And unless Sanchez, figures it out, which why do we have any belief that would happen at this point?
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I think if it was going to be Geno, it would have been very easy for Rex at some point this week to just say, hey, Geno's going to be the guy. We're going to give him a little work on Thursday to get ready with the starters. But he's going to string this out. I honestly don't expect him to even officially name a starter, maybe even until game day against Tampa. But I do think they're gearing up Sanchez to be that guy for Week 1. And like you said, how long is he going to last? I mean, they have that brutal 5-game stretch, in the middle of the year from weeks 5 to 9, I think it is. And I would guess that maybe towards the end of that stretch or sometime after that, we'll probably see Geno get his shot, because they're going to want to see, what they have from him in a large enough sample where they need to decide where, hey, are we going to look in free agency at a quarterback? Are we going to look at drafting another quarterback high? So he'll get his shot at some point this year. But for week one, I do think it will be Sanchez as well. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, because, there's obviously other things going on with this team, besides the quarterback. What did you think of the defense? Obviously it was a rough start with David Wilson's run, but really after that, everything seemed to kind of settle down a little bit.
The defense for the last couple of years are obviously the strength, even since Rex has been here. But they've always been prone to that big play. Like last year, even though it was a disaster of a year, the defense still rated high, but there was still one or two plays every game where they blow it open. And when they were winning games and going to the AFC Championship, they were not giving up those big plays. And then last year, a do-or-die game against the Titans, and the defense is great for the entire game, but then Chris Johnson has an 80-yard touchdown run, and the offense just can't score. So you get yourself in that situation where the defense is in a spot where they've got to be perfect. And so you have a rough start like you did on Saturday night, but then they settle down and they get into it and they do what they do. Rex being back in total control of the defense is obviously going to help them. And as we go forward, you look at this roster and maybe you've got some questions at safety, but the rest of the lineup, as far as defensively, it's solid. Downright, you've got a stud in Muhammad Wilkerson and veterans like Harrison Pace. Cromartie coming off a Pro Bowl. It's a good unit. If you can get anything out of your safeties, you're going to have a defense that's going to keep you in games, and it is what it is. It's Rex's influence, and they've actually done a decent job on that side of the ball. We all expect a rough season, but it might be a rough season full with low-scoring games because I don't see this defense being that bad.
Yeah, I think the defensive line is going to be very, very good, particularly once Quentin Coples is back in the mix, kind of playing that hybrid defensive line, outside linebacker spot.
Absolutely.
And, the concerns, I think, like you mentioned, safety, who's really going to, step forward. I don't know if there's going to be one guy who really ends up playing starter-level reps next to DeJuan Landry. I think it's going to be kind of a mismatch of Jaquan Jarrett, Antonio Allen, Kyle Wilson's going to see some time there, even though he still, in year 4, has no idea how to play the football in the air, and it just remains infuriating to watch at this point. And also, I'm a little concerned about, Demario Davis. He's a guy that gets a lot of positive hype from the coaching staff. Fans are rightfully excited about him, but, didn't really look ready last year, hasn't had a great preseason. There's going to be a learning curve with him this year, and that linebacking core, and even David Harris's plays fell off last year. There could still be some issues there, but, you have to have faith in Rex because the results have always been there. He always turns out a top 10 defense, and you have to figure that the Jets are going to have a defense that allows them to be competitive in most weeks. If they were able to be 6-7 and playing meaningful football in December last year with that roster, how much worse can they really be, particularly on offense this year? There's no reason to think that hopefully they can't kind of hover around 500 again.
But even last year with with Revis out, if you can get anything from Milner, which would be an upgrade over Wilson, obviously, that opens it up for Rex to do what he likes to do on defense. The beauty of Rex's defense with Revis was that he would put obviously Revis Island, and you put him on the other team's best guy, and you can do whatever you want with those other 10 guys, and that usually involved sending the majority of those 10 guys at the quarterback in big spots. That's Rex's D. Super aggressive, exotic looks, get in there. If you can get anything out of Milner, anything, better than Wilson, be a first-round pick, the defense it will help the problems with your linebacking core. All that stuff will work itself out.
Yeah, I think Milner, again, has had a bit of a rough summer, but you got to figure with that talent, he's going to hopefully be healthy for week 1, and there'll be a learning curve with him as well. But, hopefully he, picks it up and is really rolling by mid-season. The running back position, we had, these last couple of days, there's been some quote-unquote surprising cuts. Maybe not surprising, but bigger name cuts with Braylon Edwards, Hayden Smith, Joe McKnight. Now Mike Goodson's going to be back in the fold for week 5. He has the 4-game suspension by the NFL. How are you feeling about the running back position heading into the season? It's been a quiet summer for Chris Ivory. It's really only been Bilal Powell back there who's been out of practice and out in every game.
Right. We just don't know. It's so in flux. You just have no idea. You're not going to get anything from Goodson for 4 weeks, and it's good to have him back with the team but how much work can he really get in the couple of weeks that he's here? Ivory, injury prone. Can he be the guy? And Powell's a big fan favorite. I do know a lot of my Twitter feed and a lot of my friends are like, you got to give Powell his looks, and he looked all right at the end of last season. Granted, there are no more every down NFL backs. I mean, there's Adrian Peterson and there's a few more, but most of the time in today's NFL, your running backs are by committee, so you're going to need 2 and 3 guys. Losing McKnight, it was somewhat surprising to me because he does other things, but I think they just got tired of him, tired of maybe some of the off-the-field stuff with the Twitter thing. And, in today's NFL with the concussion game, and is it a concussion, is it not? I don't, it's definitely a position that's in flux, and you just hope that you can get Goodson, Ivory, and Powell on the field together at the same time and run that committee and help out your quarterbacks who, no matter who it is, are going to need all kinds of time and at least a threat of a run to try to help these wide receivers who now with Braylon gone are very young. You don't know when Holmes is coming back, if at all. And you're out there with Stephen Hill, who's still trying to figure it out. It's just as opposed to when I said on defense, I feel somewhat good about those guys. You look at the offense and up and down, and it's just every position is a question mark. It's like, well, can that guy be good? Yeah, he's done this, and yeah, I mean, you love Nick Mangold, you love D'Brickashaw Ferguson, and then you go, what do we got? So I mean, the running back position is just no different than those. Yeah, I mean, I think the hope is going to have to be that. From a talent perspective, I think Chris Ivory is the best overall player, but can he stay healthy? Can he produce on a week-to-week basis? I like Powell for what he is. He's a reliable guy. He's a good pass protector. He's a good, tough inside runner. He's not the kind of guy you want to have to give 15 to 20 touches a week. I think how they kind of drew up this backfield was that Ivory was going to be kind of the bell cow, mostly every down back. Goodson would be the third down guy, would do some more of the outside stuff, and Powell is more of a versatile guy who could kind of back up both of them since both of them have an injury history. I don't know what to expect from Goodson. Obviously, it's a weird situation. He has to get himself into shape the next month. But, yeah, it's a question mark like most spots in that offense. I mean, you look at left guard. As of now, Vlad Dukas is the guy. Hopefully, Brian Winters is able to push him at some point this season, unless, Dukas really does have his act together. A lot of people seem to be fully sold on him just because he played, a good half against the Giants in a preseason game. I need to see a little more. Yeah. And receiver, I mean, there's been a couple pleasant surprises in camp. I mean, I was a guy who was very down on Clyde Gates last year, and I got to give him credit. He's had a good summer. He looked good when he was out there in the preseason. He's been a little banged up as of late, but he should be a guy who's in the mix. And Ryan Spadola has really been one of the best stories of camp. I mean, not only does he seem to be a guy who's definitely going to make the team, but might even be a guy who could be contributing, 10, 15 reps a game right out of the gate. Yeah, it seems that way. It seems every time the twos or threes get in there, Spadola's making a play. His name's being called. He had the big one on Saturday. Clyde Gates, a guy with that kind of speed, is the reason he's going to keep getting chances. The Dolphins, during Hard Knocks, hated to let him go. The Jets scooped him up. It's more to this position than just straight ahead speed, but that kid's got it. That guy's got it for sure. You still have Jeremy Curley, who is, I think, underrated as a slot wide receiver, but unfortunately in this offense he may have to be a pure two for the time being. But yeah, you have to be. We've had the Jets have had good luck with undrafted walk-on wide receivers before, so maybe Spadola continues that trend. But bottom line is these guys are going to have to help Geno and Sanchez out. And, I've always thought that part of the reason Sanchez's game has went down in the last 2 years was because the weapons around him got worse. He was fine. He wasn't an elite quarterback, but he was a perfectly serviceable game manager when it was Cotchery and Braylon Edwards and Santonio Holmes. And then, and then Dustin Keller at tight end. People want to wonder why his game has regressed. Well, the talent around him has regressed, and he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Tom Brady. He can't make it work. Those guys got to be open. If they're not open, it's not going to work out. So it's just these new guys, this crew is going to have to figure it out, and they're going to have to figure it out in a hurry. All right, one last question before we let you go. I know it's tough to do this and always put a number on it. What is your general prediction on a win-loss record, or kind of a ballpark range, as of right now heading into the season? I said it in a couple of pieces that I've written so far for PFC. I feel like this is the worst case scenario because they're not going to be great, but they're not going to be bad enough to be in that Jadeveon Clowney sweepstakes.
Yeah.
The defense is going to keep them in games. They're going to keep them in every game, and it's going to be ugly because they're not going to score very much. So you're looking at a lot of really bad 17-9, 20-13 kind of games. I feel like with the East being what it is, the Dolphins don't look to be making that step. The Bills are somehow at worse shape than we are at quarterback, than the Jets are at quarterback, excuse me. And obviously the Patriots are the Patriots with Brady and everything. So anything between 6 and 8, but 8 would be absolute best case scenario. 8 would be Sanchez or Geno figures it out, everybody stays healthy, and you get back Goodson, and he's right into it, and you get back Holmes. I think that's the ceiling. I would say 8, and I think that's the worst thing that could happen to them, because being mediocre, it gets you the 14th pick, and where do you go from there? I don't know. I think the season's going to be in flux. 8 games maybe saves Rex's job, but I don't know what else they could be gunning for.
Yeah. Someone had asked me right before the Jets-Giants game, just to throw out a prediction, and I said 7-9. And I feel after watching that preseason game, I think that might have been a little high. But yeah, I think there's somewhere. I would say worst case, maybe like a 5-11. Best case, 8, maybe 9 wins. But I mean, they're going to need a couple things to really break their way. But we'll see. I mean, you never know. It is the NFL, but it's certainly been a difficult past couple of years for Rex Ryan and these Jets. Thanks for taking the time for coming on. This is Billy O'Rourke writing for us here, right at Pro Football Central. What's the Twitter handle to follow? Do you have one?
I do. It's at Mr. Bill 11, MRBILL11. It's not just Jets. It's a little bit of everything. A little bit, I can get out there and I go off on rants, so I'll understand if you jump ship after a while. But yeah, it's JetsCentral on Sunday for sure. So if anybody's welcome to jump on, and I engage too. If you want, I'm not I'm not somebody that's just out there throwing out links. So yeah, it was good to be on, man. I appreciate the invite.
All right, absolutely. We'll be following your work all year. Thanks again.
Have a good one.
This is Darren Wall, quarterback of the New York Jets, and you are listening to Turn on the JetsCentral Radio Show. This is Michael Johnson.
This is David Nelson. This is Rob McClain.
This is Antonio Gray.
This is Antonio Brown.
Hi, this is Kyle Rudolph.
On the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
We're here.
All right, and we are back. That was Billy O'Rourke from Pro Football Central, and our fancy new spot in the middle of the podcast, hitting players from all around the NFL. And a little earlier, you heard our Darren Wall spot. Real excited about what Darren's shown this preseason. Think he has a chance to be a big factor on the defense, particularly as Kyle Wilson endlessly continues to struggle out there. In a couple minutes, we're going to have Dan Marcus of our very own Turn the Jets join us. Dan joined our site about 4 or 5 months ago, and he's had some really good pieces that have really inspired a lot of debate on the site, most recently about what else, the quarterback competition. So, as we mentioned, the Jets head into their final preseason game on Thursday against the Philadelphia Eagles. From the sounds of it, I wouldn't expect to see Mark Sanchez or Geno Smith. I would look for Matt Sims to probably get the start, and maybe for Greg McElroy to get a little playing time if he's healthy enough. Beyond that, what else to really watch for in that game? Battle for the temporary third running back spot. Khalil Bell, Moses Madu will be battling for that. You got to figure the Jets will keep 4 total running backs, and then when Goodson comes back, they'll probably release one. At receiver, you got to figure at this point that Holmes, Hill, Gates, Curley, Spadola are locks. The question is, are they going to keep the 6th guy? Ben Abuanu has had a very good preseason. He's a quality special teams player. I think he's done enough to stick. They also recently signed Muhammad Massaquoi. Maybe if he makes a couple plays, the Jets give some thought to keeping him around. He is a veteran guy who's made some plays in this league. And then defensively, they're still trying to sort out the safety position. I think we're going to see a lot of Jaquan Jarrett, a lot of Antonio Allen. It's going to be a platoon situation, I would guess, particularly early in the year until, one guy kind of distinguishes himself, and we haven't really seen that yet. And then up front, I don't think we'll see much, if any, of like David Harris and Muhammad Wilkerson, maybe only a little Sheldon Richardson. But it's the Bollinger Bowl. It's always interesting to see, what random player is going to step up in this game. I remember a couple of years ago, Jesse Chapman had like 39 carries for like 170 yards, and like then he was like ended up getting suspended and never playing the game. So it's always some random player who comes up and makes some plays who usually doesn't end up having an impact. So enjoy your final night of preseason football. Now we are ready to welcome on our last guest of the evening, Dan Marcus of TurnOnTheJets.com. Dan, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I didn't know how this calling system works, so I just felt like I was eavesdropping. But it's definitely good to be on again.
Absolutely. Our soundboard, very high-tech. Brian's doing great work for us over there. So I guess let's just hop right into what we saw Saturday night. I know the last article you wrote for us was about what quarterback gave the team the best chance to win, and I think Saturday really just seemed to be a validation that, at least for right now, Mark Sanchez gives his team a better chance to win than Geno Smith.
Yeah, I'm not even – see, I thought that going into Saturday. And then when I saw Sanchez go down on a heap, it was flashing images of Chad Pennington circa 2005, and I was like, oh my God, it's the rotator cuff. There we go again. So I'm not sure, because the Jets regime's turned into like Belichick-esque over the last year or so in terms of divulging injuries. So I actually don't know the extent of that shoulder. Some people, I hear it's the bruise, but something tells me that after he was, doing the warm-up throws on the sideline where he couldn't go, something tells me that there's a little bit more than just the bruise. Something tells me that it's going to be like a season-long thing, which I hope is not the case. But, I gotta just assume the worst with the Jets.
Yeah, I hear you. And if it is the worst and he's not ready to go week one, it's going to be very interesting to see what they try to do with Geno Smith, because from what we're hearing, he's not going to play on Thursday against Philly. So, you would have to think Marty Morningway is going to come out, if he had Geno Smith under center, with a very conservative game plan that's going to lean very heavily on that running game. I'm sure we'll see plenty of the Bilal Powell Wildcat, which is now a big part of the offense. And, what did you – let's try to focus on the positives. There were a couple positives from Geno Smith on Saturday. It wasn't all a complete train wreck, although there were some ugly parts. What did you like that you saw from him on Saturday?
It's what I like in Geno is always what people have liked in Geno thus far. Is he's got the arm talent. There's no doubt about it. He could sling the ball wherever, and he made a lot of nice touch throws. I think it was that one to, I want to say it was Stephen Hill, it was Kellen Winslow. Where it was perfectly placed, great throw. There's no doubt the kid's got the physical talent, but his knowledge of, his ability to read NFL defenses and his just knowledge of the playbook and being able to play in a pro-style offense just isn't there. And I thought coming out that it wouldn't be there. So, those are a few flashes I saw. But he's obviously got a ways to go. So I would never want to throw his kid's feet to the fire right away. I think that would be best served by nobody to just throw him into the wolves when he's obviously not ready. So I want him to have the Colin Kaepernick treatment. I want him to sit at least for a year and kind of absorb everything and learn. And even though Sanchez makes a lot of mistakes, he does everything right as a pro, so learn how to be a pro. And then maybe next year, maybe towards the end of the season, if it's a total disaster, you can see what he's got. And then there's no pressure on him at that point. So that's what I'd like to see, and that's what I saw from him.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously the Sanchez injury kind of muddles everything, so it will be very touch and go, I'm sure, with the quarterback situation the first couple of weeks of the year. Offensively, this team is really full of question marks. Who do you think could be a pleasant surprise on this offense this year outside of, Chris Ivory, who's a guy that a lot of people mention but has had a quiet summer? Who else do you think, could put together a more productive than expected season?
Well, we're talking offensively. He's not a surprise at this point because he's lit it up all camp. It's Bilal Powell. Bilal Powell, I think, he deserves, from what he's done in camp, to get the bulk of the carries because he's shown that not only can he run the ball very well, he's got a little bit of a burst, but he can also catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. He's not dropping the same amount of passes we did last year. He's getting better in pass protection. So Bilal Powell is a guy, especially now that he's run that wildcat wrinkle, could be very interesting for this offense. Like you said, there's a lot of question marks. The wideouts are very, 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 very iffy. You don't know how it's going to go. Maybe Stephen Hill develops into the guy we think he does, which would be great. but I'm not expecting huge leaps and bounds from last year, just some forward progress, so to speak. Clyde Gates is the most interesting to me. Clyde Gates, he was just a guy that he was one of Sperano's guys that we got off the Dolphins last year when they cut him, and they brought him in there, not having gone through camp, he had to assimilate, and he got hurt, and he was on and off the roster, but he's got a lot of speed, and he's really lit it up in camp. So I want to see if he's the real deal because, although you don't like Braylon, I'm a Braylon fan, and they kind of it's Clyde Gates and a combination of Gates and Spagnuolo's performance that made Braylon expendable. So I'm hoping he can justify the roster spot.
All right, let's flip over to the other side of the football. I think it was really outside of that David Wilson big play. It was a pretty encouraging overall performance for the defense, particularly for some of the younger defensive linemen, Sheldon Richardson, Damian Harrison, both standout performances. Do you think this has the makings of being another top 10 Rex Ryan led defense despite some of the deficiencies at linebacker and safety?
I did until I saw the fact that Kyle Wilson apparently doesn't know how to turn his head still. That's still a big red flag to me, considering that.
It's amazing. It's in his fourth year, and he was a first-round draft pick, and he can't play the football in the air. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, they teach you face guarding's okay in high school. When you get past high school, you should know how to turn your head, especially if you're a first-round draft pick and it's your fourth year in the NFL. But I could spend an entire episode on Kyle Wilson, so I'll keep moving on. I think the secondary has a few more question marks than we acknowledge, but I do think there's enough depth there to just kind of compensate for it. What I really think the key for the Jets defense is going to be this year to make them top 10 is the fact that Rex took back the play calling duties. And if you saw it Saturday night, it was vintage 2009 aggressive Rex play calling on defense with a lot of wrinkles in terms of blitzes and a lot of guys just moving around. You don't know who's coming, who's going. And I liked it. I hadn't seen it in a while. I hadn't seen the creativity. And it's going to be, even though we're more talented, it's going to be a lot of scheme that's going to make this team a top 10 defense again. So, because there's still just a lot of question marks, and I think it's going to be more on Rex's shoulders to make all these pieces work, and especially without Copeland and everything. So that's what I see as the key to making this team a top 10 defense again.
So, overall, big picture, what is your expectation level for this season? Maybe not necessarily in a win total, but just, how competitive do you think this team will be on a week-to-week basis? And do you think they're going to be able to kind of tread water through that rough patch when they play, I believe it's Atlanta, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, New England in a 5-week stretch, kind of in that middle patch of the year?
Well, see, I thought, if everyone from a wins and losses standpoint, I know you didn't ask me that, but I always thought the sweet spot for this team is like 7 wins. And if everything breaks right, it's 9 wins. Mm-hmm. That said, the game's not played on paper. So what I'm looking at is, I think we're definitely going to be competitive through the first 2-3 weeks. And a lot of these teams, when you're looking at it on paper, they're not like the Saints, the Falcons. These guys, they have a lot of prolific offenses, but they don't have great defenses at all. The only problem is I don't know if we have an offense to take advantage of their defensive holes and defensive just shortcomings. But I think they could possibly tread water. I was more confident prior to Saturday night than I was afterwards just because of the Sanchez injury. And more so than the Sanchez injury, it became apparent to me that this shotgun marriage between Idzik and Rex Ryan isn't working thus far. That's just from where I'm sitting. That's from what I'm seeing at this point. It could be something that we're blowing the preseason out of proportion, etc. But to me, it doesn't seem like it's working, and this could be something that looms over the season, especially with Rex coaching for his job. And obviously, you've got the young quarterback drafted by the current GM waiting in the wings. It's just not a recipe for success. That said, there's a lot of pieces, and I think the defense can make us competitive. And if Sanchez comes out and can complete like 60-something% of his passes and just not have those 1 or 2 or more last year, but those 1 or 2 blow-up games, then we can stay competitive and watchable through probably 10 weeks. That's my over-under.
I know it's sad when we're at this point of the season and to talk about until what week we could stay competitive until. But like you said, you never know. Well, we'll see, and hopefully the defense could allow them, to be competitive in most weeks. Final question, and this will segue good into our roundtable, which we're running tomorrow. What are you looking for in particular in the Bollinger Bowl on Thursday? It's always kind of a weird way to end the preseason, but is there anything that you're any players, any trends you're looking for in particular?
Oh, okay. Well, I have a little bias here. I didn't like him. All right, so I'm from Matt Sims and I are both from the same town. So I'm rooting for him because I like every time Ian Eagle says from Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, Matt Sims. Mm-hmm. And the kid's got a cannon, and he's a nice guy. I met him. So I hope he goes out there and lights it up. Yeah, I didn't like him initially because he decided to forego going to my alma mater in favor of going to the football powerhouse high school, which is Don Bosco. But I thought initially that his dad was getting him the tryout, so I didn't think there was any reason he should have been in the NFL. But he's kind of proven me wrong, and I hope he goes out and proves me wrong some more. Aside from that, Spadola just keeps lighting it up. I wouldn't be disappointed at all. That'd be nice. And defensively, Leger Douzable, he looked pretty good. I just want the ability to say Leger Douzable for the rest of the season, so I hope he gets a roster spot.
I agree. Leger, yeah, he's been very, very strong all preseason. I do think he's going to end up snagging a roster spot.
Yeah, and he's on the all-name team. Leger Douzable. There's a few guys up there like he's in the Lito Shepherd echelon of awesome names. So that's why I'm rooting for him. Other than that, this game, it's the fourth preseason game. It's not watchable. But nonetheless, I'll be watching it, and that will probably segue nicely into that lead up to the home opener against Tampa and the return of Revis. So
yes,
that's what
11 days of Darrelle Revis hype, and 11 days. You could already see the Daily News article next Monday or Tuesday with some kind of quote from Revis about something about Rex or the Jets organization, and then Rex says something back to it. It's just a matter of time. It's coming.
Yeah, my question is, over under Revis picks off Sanchez or Gino. I'm saying if they're smart, it'd be 0. I would never throw at that guy, but we'll see.
It's the Jets, so I don't want to write it off not happening. I just, please God, don't let that happen in MetLife Stadium on Sunday. Give us a little sanity to start the year off, but we'll see. You never know with this team. Yes, you would think they will not be targeting Darrelle Revis despite this being his first game back from injury. All right, so thanks for joining us. It's Dan Marcus at Turn on the Jets. We're trying to get him rolling on Twitter a little bit. He's at DanMarcus92, correct?
Yeah. I'm working on the whole Twitter thing, so if you want to follow me, I'll do my best to keep you entertained with some football tidbits and some wry humor. So, yeah, give me a follow if possible.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll be looking for your content all season on the site.
All right. Thanks, guys.
What's going on, Jet Nation? You're listening to Antonio Gouray, defensive line, New York Jets, and you're listening to Turn on the Jets, Central Radio, baby. Be good all day, every day.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com, ONNIT.com/football radio.
All right, and that is going to wrap up another episode of Turn the Jets Central Radio. We are going to be back next Tuesday, week 1. Jets, Bucks, Darrelle Revis back in MetLife Stadium as an opposing player. Who would have thought this day would ever come? The season is finally here. Next week, I will be giving my endless amounts of predictions. Generally, I'm hoping about 30 to 40% will end up being right. We'll see. Either way, we got one more preseason game to get through, so stay with us. TurnTheJets.com, on Twitter at TurnTheJets. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.